You'll sign or you'll spend your last years alone, Dad. Your choice. My daughter said that to me across my own kitchen table, sliding a stack of legal papers toward me with one manicured finger, and she said it the way you'd remind someone of an appointment. Sign over control of my money, my accounts, my house, everything to her, right now, or she would take away the only thing I had left, which was her and her children and any family at all. And at 74 years old, a widower, she was betting I was too lonely and too afraid to call her bluff. She had it all figured out. She'd spent years making very sure I had nowhere else to turn. She'd arranged my loneliness on purpose, brick by brick, so that the day came to corner me, there'd be no one in my corner but her. She just forgot one thing. To make me that alone, she'd had to erase somebody. And the person you erase, if they were worth erasing, is worth finding again. I picked up the phone that night, and I called the one person my daughter forgot ever existed. But I'm getting ahead of myself. My name is George Hartley. I'm 74 years old, and I was the pharmacist in my town for 41 years, which means I filled the prescriptions for half the deaths and births here. And I've been a quiet man my whole life. Not slow, not soft in the head, which becomes important, because the entire basis of what my daughter tried to do to me was the idea that an old pharmacist who counted pills to the exact milligram for 41 years could no longer be trusted to count his own money. Let me tell you about my family, because the hole in it is the whole story. My wife, my Dot, passed 5 years ago, and we had 2 children, our daughter, Sharon, and our son, Michael.
I have to tell you about Michael, because you can't understand any of this without him. Mike was my boy, my younger one, easy and warm, the kind of person who remembered your dog's name. He became a teacher, married a sweet girl named Lauren, and they had one daughter, my granddaughter, Emma. And then, 12 years ago, on an ordinary Tuesday, a truck ran a red light and Mike was gone, 41 years old. Lauren had passed 2 years before that from cancer. So just like that, my granddaughter Emma, 17 years old, had lost both her parents, and I had lost my son. Now, I need you to hold 2 facts together. Fact 1, after Mike died, that grieving 17-year-old girl, Emma, was the living piece of my son left on this earth, and I loved her with everything left of my broken heart. Fact 2, within a few years, Emma was gone from my life completely, and I believed for over a decade that she had chosen to leave. That belief was a lie. My daughter built it. Sharon was always the one who kept score, who counted who got loved best. And after Mike died, the only thing standing between Sharon and being the sole center of this family, the sole heir, was a 17-year-old orphan named Emma. So Sharon got rid of her. Not with a blow, with 1,000 small cuts over years, so patient and so quiet that I, a grieving father, never saw the knife.
It started reasonably. Sharon began to manage things with Emma. She'd tell me Emma was struggling, acting out, that it was better to give her space. When Emma didn't call, Sharon explained the girl was angry, didn't want contact. Emma's letters, the ones she wrote me, came to my house when Sharon was collecting my mail during a stretch when I was sick, and I never saw a single one. Drip by drip, Sharon stood between my granddaughter and me, telling each of us that the other had stopped caring, until the space between us was so wide neither of us could see across it. There was one moment I'll never forgive myself for. About 3 years after Mike died, on what would have been his birthday, I got it in my head to call Emma myself, and Sharon got a strange, urgent look and said, "Dad, please don't. Not today. I talked to her last week, and she's in a really dark place. She said some things about you I don't even want to repeat. If you call her today, you're just going to get hurt." And I believed her, and I put the phone down. I found out 12 years later that Emma had spent that very birthday hoping I'd call. My daughter stood between me and my son's child on my dead son's birthday and turned me around with a lie. That's the genius of it. The lie is protected by your own love for the liar. By the time Dot passed 5 years ago, Emma was simply gone, and it was just Sharon. She'd made sure of it, positioning herself as my only family, my only help, and I was grateful, the way a lonely old man is grateful, never seeing that the loneliness itself was the thing she'd manufactured. A man alone, with no one else to turn to, is a soft target. And about 6 months ago, she decided it was time to collect.
It started with concern, the way these things wear the mask of love. Sharon began worrying out loud about whether I could manage everything on my own. My bills, my accounts. "Dad, you are 74. You shouldn't have to stress about money." I, a man who spent 41 years counting medication to the milligram, found myself being gently told I was no longer up to balancing my own checkbook. And she was clever about it. If I forgot a name for a second, the way everyone does, she'd go quiet and give me a worried look. She was constructing a portrait of a declining old man, brushstroke by brushstroke. And then came the night of the papers. She came over with a folder and laid out a durable power of attorney, full control, every account, the house, my investments, to be placed under her authority. She had it drawn up, little plastic arrows pointing at the lines. And when I hesitated, when I said I wanted to think about it, my daughter's mask fully came off. She told me I had no one to talk to. She reminded me she was all I had, that Emma was gone, that my friends were dying off, that I was an old man alone in a big house, and that she was the only thing standing between me and complete isolation. And then she said it. "You'll sign or you'll spend your last years alone, Dad. You won't see me. You won't see the grandkids. Nothing. Is that what you want? To die alone in this house? Just sign and everything stays nice." Just sign and everything stays nice.
I want to tell you what I felt, because it wasn't what she expected. There was fear, the bone-deep fear of an old man threatened with solitude. But underneath, something else woke up. Because a pharmacist spends his whole life reading past the label to the real ingredients underneath, checking what's actually in the bottle before he hands it to someone. And sitting there, I finally read my daughter's contents. This wasn't love wearing a worried face. This was a hold-up. My own child was holding my loneliness to my head like a gun and demanding my life savings and calling it taking care of me. I told her I'd think about it. She left the papers, confident. That night I couldn't sleep, and I went looking through Mike's old boxes, the ones I'd never been able to open, and I found a photograph. Mike, young, holding a baby, Emma. And on the back, in my son's handwriting, it said, "Dad and me and the next one. 3 generations of Hartley men, even if this one's a girl. Love you, Pop." 3 generations. I sat on that closet floor at 2 in the morning and something broke open in me. My granddaughter. My son's daughter. I'd let Sharon tell me for 12 years that Emma didn't want me, and I'd believed it because believing it was easier than driving to find out. And now my other child was threatening to leave me alone in the world, and I thought, with a clarity like cold water, I am not alone. I have a granddaughter. Sharon made me forget she existed, but I am about to be cut off from this family anyway. What in God's name do I have left to lose by finding her? So the next morning, I did the thing my daughter never imagined. I started looking for Emma.
It wasn't hard, which broke my heart, because it meant it had never been hard. I'd just never tried. A few hours and I had a number. My hand shook so badly I could barely dial. A woman answered. "This is Emma Hartley." And I couldn't speak. And then I managed. "Emma, it's your grandfather. It's George. It's Pop." And there was a silence so long I thought she'd hung up. And then I heard my granddaughter start to cry. And she said, "Pop, is it really you? I thought you didn't want me anymore. I thought you didn't want me anymore." She thought it was me. All those years, Sharon had told Emma the same lie in reverse, that her grandfather had washed his hands of her. My granddaughter had spent 12 years believing the last family she had left had abandoned her. We talked for 4 hours. The whole thing came out, from both ends, and it lined up exactly. The unanswered letters, the calls never returned, the lies told in both directions. And as we talked, 2 more things became clear, and the second one changed everything. The first was that Emma had never stopped loving me. She'd written, she'd called, she'd been told again and again that I didn't want her, until a hurt young woman finally stopped throwing herself against a wall.
And the second thing, the thing I could not have prayed for, was what her life had become. Because when I told Emma what was happening now, the papers, the power of attorney, sign or be alone, my granddaughter went very quiet. And then she said, "Pop, stop. Don't sign anything. Don't sign one single page." And I asked why. And Emma said, "Because protecting old people from exactly this is what I do for a living. Pop, after everything that happened with our family, I became an elder law attorney. Financial abuse of the elderly, coercion, it's my entire practice. The thing Sharon is doing to you is the thing I've spent my whole career stopping." And then she said, "I'm getting in the car. I'm coming home. Don't sign anything, and don't tell Sharon we talked. Let her think she's won. We're going to handle this right." The granddaughter my daughter erased to make me helpless had grown up into the one person on earth professionally equipped to take my daughter apart. And she was getting in the car. When Emma got to town 2 days later, and I opened my door and saw my son's face looking back at me out of a 29-year-old woman, I about went to pieces. We held on to each other in that doorway, 2 people who'd each been told the other had stopped caring, finding out in one long hug that it had never been true.
Emma laid it out the way a good lawyer does. We would not confront Sharon, not yet. We'd let her keep believing the lonely old man was cracking. Meanwhile, Emma and a colleague did everything right. They had me evaluated by a physician, so there was a signed medical record stating plainly that George Hartley was of completely sound mind, fully competent to manage his own affairs, which destroyed any claim that I needed Sharon to manage anything. We documented Sharon's coercion, the threats, the isolation, 12 years of it. And then I signed papers, all right, just not the ones Sharon brought.
I signed a new durable power of attorney and a new will, naming my granddaughter, Emma, the elder law attorney who'd driven 3 hours the moment she heard my voice, the exact opposite of what Sharon wanted, executed weeks before Sharon ever knew Emma and I had spoken. And then we let Sharon call her family meeting, because Sharon, impatient for her signature, announced a family dinner at my house to get everything finalized, meaning she planned to pressure the lonely old man into signing in front of an audience too uncomfortable to object. She set the table for her own ambush. I just added 1 chair. The night of the dinner, Sharon arrived with her folder and her confidence, with her husband and her teenagers, and she was steering me toward the papers, brisk. "Let's just get this done, Dad." And I said, "All right, Sharon, but I asked someone else to join us tonight. Family should all be here for something this important." And right then, the door from the kitchen opened, and Emma walked into the room. I have never seen a human face do what my daughter's face did in that moment. Sharon looked at the young woman she had spent 12 years erasing, the orphan she was certain she'd tied off forever, and I watched my daughter understand all at once that the one person she'd forgotten existed was standing in my dining room.
"Hi, Aunt Sharon," Emma said, very calm. "It's been a long time. 12 years, about. Funny, all the letters I wrote Pop must have gotten lost." Sharon started to talk, fast. How wonderful to see Emma. What a surprise. But right now wasn't really the moment. They had family business. Her husband was frowning, realizing his wife had a whole missing chapter he'd never known about. And Emma set her own folder on the table next to Sharon's and opened it. And she didn't raise her voice, because a quiet lawyer is so much worse than a loud one. She laid out the physician's evaluation. Sound mind, fully competent. She laid out the new valid power of attorney and will, already signed, naming herself. She explained to Sharon, in plain words, in front of her own husband and children, exactly what the document Sharon brought actually was, an attempt to obtain control of an elderly parent's assets through coercion, and exactly how thoroughly it had just failed. And then I spoke, for the first time all night. I looked at my daughter. "You told me I'd spend my last years alone unless I signed. But Sharon, you only got to make me that alone by getting rid of her." I nodded at Emma, my son's girl. "You cut her out 12 years ago so you could be the only one, and then you used the loneliness you built to try to rob me. You forgot she existed, but she existed the whole time, 3 hours away, breaking her heart over a grandfather she thought had thrown her out. The family you tried to shrink down to just yourself was always bigger than you. Well, I remember now." There was no clever play left for Sharon. Her own husband was staring at her. Her teenage kids were staring at her, hearing for the first time that they'd had a cousin, an aunt, a whole branch of family their mother had cut off. The papers were already signed, the wrong way for her. The medical evaluation made her "he can't manage his money" story a lie on its face. Her own 15-year-old daughter was the one who broke the silence. She looked at her mother and said in a small voice, "Mom, we had a cousin? You told us Uncle Mike's family didn't want anything to do with us." And there it was, the same lie exposed in real time. Sharon opened her mouth and shut it. Some silences are a whole confession. I did not scream at Sharon. I told her she was still my daughter and that the door of my heart was not fully shut, because a parent's door never fully shuts. But the keys to my money and my care and my last years were Emma's now, in writing, beyond her reach. That was 4 months ago. Emma moved back to town. She works out of an office here now, helping other old people fight off the exact thing that nearly happened to me. On Sundays she comes for dinner, and I'm teaching her the things about her father that Sharon spent 12 years making sure she'd never hear. We're getting the years back the only way you can, which is by refusing to waste the ones that are left. Sharon and I speak rarely and carefully. The damage is the damage. Her children have started reaching out to Emma on their own, curious about the family their mother hid from them, and I let that happen, because secrets were always Sharon's only real weapon, and I am done helping her keep them. People ask me how I didn't see it for 12 years. A good lie told by someone you love is the hardest thing in the world to see through, because seeing through it means admitting that someone you love is lying to you, and a heart will believe almost anything to avoid that. Sharon counted on my love for her to keep me from questioning her. It nearly worked. My daughter told me I'd spent my last years alone. She'd worked 12 years to make it true. She just forgot that to make a man that alone, you have to erase someone first, and the someone she erased had grown up into the one person in the world who could undo it all. She tried to leave me with no one. She forgot I had 2 children and the son who left me a granddaughter, and that love, unlike a power of attorney, is never the only copy. I called the one person my daughter forgot existed. It turned out she'd been waiting 12 years for the phone to ring.